Hello and welcome to Aniview Reviews. Today we're talking about Umineko no Naku Koro. It was made by Studio D in 2009. It's 26 episodes long. It's a drama mystery horror series.
On October 4th, 1986, the lives of 18 people, relatives and servants of the Ushiromiya family, would change forever. That fateful day, they all gather on the island Rokunjima to discuss the inheritance of the Ushiromiya family head. The discussion leads to the legend of the Golden Witch Beatrice, who bestowed Kinzo, the family head, with vast riches. Things quickly escalate when people start dying, and it seems no other explanation except Beatrice's magical power can be found.
Alright, so Umineko is essentially the spiritual successor to the Higurashi franchise. And in some ways it does things as solid as Higurashi, but on others it just kind of falls short a bit.
Yeah, I found that Umineko is a pretty interesting murder mystery, and it has the insane style that Higurashi had. However, it ultimately falls short of the impact that Higurashi had in the first place.
Okay, so coming to animation, this series looks great. All of the characters stand out far from one another, and the animation quality is very high. The art design is very solid, and the series tends to pull very few punches with its death sequences. Overall, Umineko is quite a visual treat.
In the sound department, Umineko is really good at what it does. It has a really good soundtrack because it is by Studio Dean. However, I felt it was a little bit weaker than their usual. It has an amazing opening song and a pretty solid ending. However, I felt that the overall inside soundtrack isn't up to par as a series like Vampire Knight and Simone did. However, it's still excellent as it is Studio Dean.
When it comes to the story, Umineko follows an arc-like structure similar to its predecessor Higurashi. The events unfold, which lead the cast to this sort of gruesome ending, which is then reset at the beginning of the following arc. However, Umineko is more, as I said, a murder mystery setup, and you as the viewer have a lot more to go off of, I found, than you did at the very beginning of Higurashi. Unfortunately, though, as the plot sort of unravels itself, I found that you tend to lose a lot more ground with the plot than you gain.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. The logic used in the mystery seemed a bit incoherent because they constantly use ideas like these locked rooms and extra people on the island, and basically just magic, which they were trying to disprove throughout the entire series. So it just seemed to me just too incoherent to really make sense. I also found that they did a lot of side plots over this major mystery that's going on, and the side plots were just wild half the time and didn't really make a lot of sense how they tied into the main story. So I found that if you're trying to go along for the ride they're trying to give you, you almost can't because they spend so much time twisting and turning and going on tangents that you couldn't really focus on that main storyline murder mystery that they were going for.
Okay, so one thing that really kept me watching in the show was the hope that something within all this sort of confusion that they throw at you would finally just sort of click, and then I could piece all of the previous clues that I'd gathered together in order to sort of try to solve this mystery. Now, while this never actually happened, this sort of sheer anticipation of that moment is what really kept me intrigued. And all throughout watching the series, I found myself quite entertained with everything that was happening. It's kind of iffy at times, but it's a very entertaining show, and I think a lot of people can just watch it for its pure entertainment value, not for its logical consistency, per se.
Yeah, I gotta say that even though I did feel that this mystery was so incoherent throughout the series, it really was the driving force and made you want to watch each episode. The whole idea of what's happening on the island, the craziness of the deaths, it's really entertaining, and that's what really made the series worthwhile to watch, even if its logical consistency, as you said, isn't really there. So I did find that part of it enjoyable. On the small side stories, I actually found those a little bit horrendous overall. You had minor love stories, family drama going on, and I have seen so many series do these types of things so much better that even though they're okay in the series, it just felt like the style overpowered any sort of substance that these small side stories could possibly have.
Alright, so coming to the ending now, for me it was kind of a miss, but there is still some hope lingering, because the ending that it gives isn't really a true ending. It's very similar with Higurashi. When you watch Higurashi, it doesn't really give you the answer to what you're looking for, but then, lo and behold, Kai came out and it sort of wrapped up everything. So this is also based off a visual novel, just like Higurashi, and there's a second sort of section coming out now that's called Umineko Chiru, and it's supposed to be like sort of answer arcs to, you know, what's been going on all this past 26 episodes. So without that, I don't think I can really be fine with the ending that they gave it, because they even say at one point that, oh, this is not the true ending, tee-hee, all the little witches are like laughing and having a joke, and I know it was kind of sad.
Yeah, it does kind of suck just knowing when you finish the series that it's not the right ending, and they explicitly state it that, you have to wait for the real answer to come up, and so, it's not as bad as a punch in the face as some other series like Claymore, but at the same time, without that second series coming out, like right now, it is kind of like, oh my god, just come out so I know what's actually going on. Because the ending is really just bad. It's not adequate if you're actually looking for the answer of how this whole series, how the murder mystery comes together.
Alright, so coming to characters. The cast is quite large at the start of Umineko, and it only grows in number as the series progresses. So our main character is Battler, and he isn't bad per se, but I found that he kind of lacks that star quality, and most of the time I found him just kind of whiny and not a very enjoyable character.
The thing is, Battler, to me, wasn't a not enjoyable character, because he did have interesting aspects. He was somewhat smart, somewhat cool in the way he did things, and he really was, like, harking on Beatrice almost the entire time, and so it made an interesting dynamic. But at the same time, I do see what you're saying. He is a little bit whiny. He isn't my favorite main character I've ever seen, so in some ways he let me down. In some ways, I think he was a suitable main character for this series.
Alright, so in the second lane we got Beatrice, who, in my opinion, is our star of this show. She just has such a wicked personality, but she has this interesting amount of hidden depth within her. There are a handful of moments throughout the story that you're gonna either A, hate her guts, B, feel like deep compassion for her, or C, be cheering her on while she tortures this family. She is such a highly memorable character, and she's probably one of my favorite villains that I've ever seen in a series.
Yeah, we haven't seen a villain with this much substance to him or her for a very long time. I mean, Beatrice has so many different levels to her. She sometimes acts compassionate, sometimes you don't even know if she's lying, because at one point she does this whole plot of this whole lie, but at other times it feels like she's truly compassionate. Under all this, though, she does seem kind of ridiculously evil, because, I mean, she has tortured and killed people endlessly. She's also called the Endless Witch, because one of her abilities is she can endlessly do stuff to people, and that's how this game is continuously going on, because she's recausing all these deaths. So, I mean, she's obviously evil, because she has no care for human life, but there does seem to be so much other substance behind her, so I really enjoyed her as a villain.
Alright, so when it comes to the rest of the cast, it's fairly hit or miss, I found. I mean, you have Maria, who's Battler's kind of creepy cousin all throughout the series, and I think she's a great example of a very strong character. She has her own sort of story near the end of the series, and she has a lot more depth than the rest of the side cast. But then the thing is, the rest of the cast, you don't really get a good feel for them, because most of the time they're just getting killed on screen, and you don't really get a chance to even know who they are, really. Now, some of the side casts, as Lyzl said earlier, sort of have these small little tales and stories between each other, but overall, I found they were just either very weak or just dull in comparison to the sort of main plot, mystery of the anime. And in the end, a lot of the sidecast characters just sort of came off as fodder for the series, I found.
What I also found sort of frustrating about the sidecast is there's two sort of aspects to them. You have the 18 main characters who are on the island being killed, and then you have Beatrice and her crew. And her crew is pretty freaking large. She has the Seven Sisters of Purgatory, who are more fan service-like, and they have sort of their partners too. Partners in crime, they have like super Sisters of Purgatory and stuff that also come into play. And then you have the witches. There's about 4, maybe 5 other witches, and each one of them actually is really cool in their character design, their ideas, their powers. But the thing is, they lack so much depth. They come in, giggle a bit, and leave. And I was really frustrated because I actually thought they were really interesting characters.
Yeah,
they had cool names, they had cool powers, but they never got used for the most part. And then you had like other servants of Beatrice too. So you have all these characters, and it's a diverse cast, right? But none of them really have the depth to make them truly interesting, except for maybe Maria, maybe one or two of the other main cast. But overall, I was really just annoyed that none of the characters really got true great stories for themselves or just interesting aspects to them.
I know exactly what you mean. Alright, so what are you going to give Umineko no Naku Koro ni?
Alright, so Umineko gets 3.5 out of 5 stars for me. I actually think it almost deserves worse for how much it's screwed up in its main story. However, for pure entertainment value and the fact that it's such high production qualities with amazing music and really good character designs and animation, I just feel like you can watch it and be entertained throughout, and there's no problem with that.
For me, I'm going to give Umineko 4 out of 5 stars. For me, it's sort of a key anime where I find that style over its substance sort of wins the day. And in the end, even though we harked on it a bit, it is a really solid series overall. It's just, there's a lot of things there that didn't come to full fruition. So it's not the greatest series, but it's still worth a watch, especially if you're a fan of the horror genre, I'd say.
Alright, so if you have any questions, comments, or requests, you can send them to aniview@hotmail.com or send us a comment on our YouTube page.
You can also talk with us in our forums via aniviewreviews.com.
So thanks for listening.
And we'll see you next time.